With two names that I'm going to push, and I'm going to start pushing it right now, that the Pittsburgh Steelers should go out and sign, that they are not end of the day biggest answers possible. They are not guys that you're looking at to save the franchise by no means. It is fillers that you can utilize right now, where next year you could target these positions because, or in 2 years you could target these positions because right now you just don't have the space, the time, the capital, or the draft picks to make it work. That's how I view this. Let's say the Pittsburgh Steelers target some wide receivers this offseason. That's pretty much a guarantee, right? They're most definitely going after some defensive linemen. Also a guarantee. Everybody and their mother has made that very clear. The Steelers have literally been inches away from defensive linemen throughout the entire week at the Senior Bowl. Every video I see, Mike Tomlin's like sniffing the guy. He's like, I'm right there. We got to believe that defensive lineman is happening for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Running back is, I mean, they're not going to leave it as Cordero Patterson. There's a job opening. They've made that clear. They're going to spend some capital on running back. Quarterback is another one. Corner's next. And I look at corner and say, you have to go get somebody on the outside. Well, if that's Dante Jackson, I don't think it's your best move, but I don't think it's your worst move. I think that you could hope Corey Trice turns into something without holding any expectations that he's going to, because he's been unable to stay healthy. And inside, you got Beanie Bishop, who you're going to put some faith in. You're going to hope turns into that guy. But, I mean, I think that him getting benched and really playing nothing by the end of the season changes a lot in his outlook for the Pittsburgh Steelers and where they stand. The way I look at this is I start with this position. Corner. Inside corner. Slot, nickel corner. That's where the Pittsburgh Steelers should look to bring back a relatively cheap veteran who continues to make plays, who's familiar with the defense, who they have had here before, who, I mean, by the end, people had complaints, but I think overall was not a bad move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I honestly think that if everybody lets me explain, the plan works out very well. Mike Hilton is my first name. Former Cincinnati Bengal. 12 tackles for loss his last 2 seasons consecutively. He'll be 31 years old by the start of the season. 1 interception last year, 2 the year before. The guy's a guy who always comes up with something at some time, and he knows how to tackle. Is he the most reliable corner when it comes to coverage? Definitely not. But this is where you come into, this is where the plan comes into place. The Steelers aren't going to go out there and find a coverage slot nickel corner that is perfect. Their options just are too limited. They're always too limited. If you have a fantastic nickel corner, you don't let him go. Nobody lets that guy walk because you can't find another one. You're going to search high and low to go get that guy. But it's why the Arthur Millettes, it's why the Mike Hiltons, it's why the Cam Suttons, it's why the Beanie Bishops of the world all have jobs all the time. Because there's just always a need for a slot corner. And if you don't have one, if you don't have Marlon Humphrey, it's a pretty steep drop to the next level. The Steelers could go out and get Mike Hilton for cheap. I would imagine very cheap. You bring back Beanie Bishop. You hope Corey Trice helps. That's how I look at it. 3-man rotation. You figure out who the best 2 are. You utilize both of them. I'm kind of hoping it's Corey Trice that can make his name and his money on the inside. That could be a physical, lengthy corner who could keep up with these guys. I think he plays well on the inside. He looked very good on the inside during training camp last year. I like him at the position. I think he's versatile. I would love to see 2 big, long corners for the Steelers with room to add a third on the outside. And it's a lot easier to go find that third on the outside. And you can probably go get a star on the outside without killing the career of Corey Trice in Pittsburgh or making Corey Trice your guy when you could probably find something better. Because, you know, Corey Trice has upside, but he's still a 7th-round pick compared to some of these guys that are coming out year in and year out. I think that works. A 1-year cheap deal, 2 years max. You figure out if you have something. It allows you to move on from Beanie if Beanie's not the guy. It allows you to figure out Corey Trice without having to worry about Corey Trice getting injured again. I just think it clears up a lot of things. Mike Hilton is my first one. Before I dive into the second one, I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I understand where you're going with it. And honestly, I don't hate the fact that they could bring back Mike Hilton. I think that he's somebody who at that position has kind of made his bread, right?
Yeah.
He was very good in Cincinnati for a very long time as that slot corner. He was good in Pittsburgh whenever he was in Pittsburgh, but obviously he perfected that as he went on. What I'm going to say is this. There are a lot of other areas, as we always talk about, that the Steelers need to address this offseason. I
Yeah.
think the biggest issue they had last season at slot corner is that they took Beanie Bishop off the field for Cam Sutton. I think that was their biggest issue. Not that Beanie Bishop was the perfect slot corner, because he wasn't. You don't expect an undrafted rookie to be perfect in that position. But I
Mm-hmm.
thought that he was getting better and better every single week. And I think that you can fix other areas and rely on Beanie Bishop. And as you mentioned, Corey Trice, hopefully, to be that 1-2 punch there. Now, if you can bring in Hilton and you can still address all these other areas, sure, because it's better to have more that's good at that position than less. But I think you do need to lean towards Beanie Bishop in this scenario and fix the other holes first. And then say you have some more space, say you have another spot on the roster, then you bring in Mike Hilton, because that's a guy who can actually teach Beanie how to excel at that position. I know Cam Sutton was supposed to be that guy, but Cam Sutton last year was just far from the guy that you expected him to be. Not
Yeah.
only that, he's a guy that has played in every position and not specified in that specific position. Hilton gives you that. Hilton gives you that experience, not just in coverage, but also the ability to blitz. I think that's one of the best things that he's been able to do. I see Beanie Bishop being able to do all that stuff. I think he is a want-to tackler. I like that of Beanie Bishop. And I think the biggest issue last year was that they took him off the field and kind of halted his development for a guy that was not at that level anymore in Cam Sutton. So
I
I would
agree.
say that I don't hate the idea, but I would rather fix something else and trust Beanie and Corey Trice in the slot.
I agree. I look at Hilton as an easy, cheap fix compared to some of the bigger names. Like, I expect Mike Hill. I don't know what a slot corner gets at 31 years old, but I don't anticipate it's going to be a lot of money. I don't think I think his last contract was 3 years, 24 million bucks, something like that. And, that's good money for a slot corner. I could see Mike Hilton signing for $3 million, over 2 years, 6 million bucks, which is not the worst deal, not the cheapest deal, but I still think it could be somewhat of a quick fix. That's how both of these guys are. I look at both of these as it allows you to quick fix that position with guys that can either fill a role or help guys develop, like you said, while allowing you to focus on bigger deals with different players that are younger. These are your old targets, I guess we'll call them, for lack of a better word here. That's how I see Mike Hilton. That's how I see this next guy is options the Steelers could sign to say, that's potentially our best option. It potentially improves things. It covers our butts in case things go wrong. Maybe it works out and it's cheap. I think you could get both of these guys for under 10 million bucks a year at the combined for under 10 million bucks a year. The second name is probably going to be a little bit more expensive. He is coming off season-ending injury. He played just 3 games last year. But the year before that, he had 7 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. And at 31 years old, he's still doing his thing. I would be shocked if the Steelers don't at least give him a phone call. He fits that middle, plug him in the nose tackle position as good as anybody in the NFL. The Steelers desperately need that position. You got to think that the Steelers have tried with Keanu Benton and it worked, but that's not where Keanu should be. He's too good to be there. And you need a Tyson Alualu. You need a Javon Hargrave. You need a Casey Hampton. You need somebody who could come in here, be a reliable vet, plug it up so you could fix everything else on the defensive line. Javon Hargrave is that guy. Why would you not go get Javon Hargrave? If you could get Javon Hargrave for $6 million bucks a year, $5 million bucks a year on a 2-year deal, let him end his career, he's made a boatload of cash. This guy has made a ton of money in the NFL. When he signed with the 49ers, it was a record-breaking defensive tackle deal. He's made his money. He's done his things. Bring him back to Pittsburgh, sign him to a 2-year deal. He's got a relationship with Cam. He loved the Pittsburgh Steelers when he was here. He's a former 3rd-round pick that worked out well in Pittsburgh. Bring him back when he's old and cheap, like Mike Tomlin says all the time. Plug him in at your nose tackle, move Keanu Benton over. And now, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, all you have to do on your defensive line is find young depth. That's what you have to do. You could go into the NFL draft and say, we could use a first-round pick on a defensive tackle if he's available, but there's no pressure for us to. So that means that if Ashton Genty's there, that means if Emeka Ibuka's there, that means if Matthew Golden's there, if Ben Morrison's there, you go with a different position. There's no urgent need to say we need a starter right now. We just need some really good depth guys. We found a Keanu Benton in round 2. We could find another one. Javon Hargrave's the easiest signing I think the Steelers can make this offseason. I just expect him to be not a lot of money. He's a risk because of the injury. But I mean, if he comes back here and he's good, which he's been his entire career, he plugs up your nose tackle position and he works perfectly to say we have just eliminated a pretty massive need on that defensive line.
Yeah, this one I completely agree with. I think you look at your defensive line as probably the biggest piece that you need to fix this offseason, or you need to figure out. I don't want to say fix because Cam Hayward was a beast. And Keanu Benton, if you put him in the right position, like you've been saying, he is an absolute stud. So you just need to kind of fill out that room in the correct way. And I think Javon Hargrave is step number 1 to doing exactly what you want to do. I think this is a room that is going to be looked at very heavily by Andy Weidel, by Art Rooney, by Omar Khan, by Mike Tomlin all summer long. They're going to need to fix this because they got embarrassed last year. Let's not mince words. They got embarrassed down the stretch because their defensive line got bullied week in and week out. That was the biggest issue with the Steelers defense, is that they could not stop the run. They need to be able to do that. And I think adding Hargrave kind of lets you put the pieces in their correct place. And you can go into the draft and add depth that can come in and kind of supplant these guys and not have to be immediately placed into the fire, right? That's what you want. We've seen guys step up when they shouldn't have had to, like Mason McCormick. That's great. But we all agree that it would have been best if Mason could have sat there, learned for a year, and then debuted next year. Now, did he handle it well? Yes. But that is not the ideal path for a lot of these players. That's not the ideal path that the Steelers want for a lot of these players. So bringing in Hargrave not only allows Benton in year 3 to kind of go off and be in his actual position, but it allows the Steelers to draft a guy and be able to develop that guy to be great in year 2 and year 3, depending on who they end up drafting. So I like this one a lot more. The Hilton one, again, it's not a bad idea, but I think that the best answer is still within the building. For this, I think that you're going to need multiple names. You're going to need multiple answers from multiple different places. And I think Hargrave out of free agency is the best place to start.
Yeah. If you could secure, that's like the most wasted position in football. Like if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, look at Keanu Benton, a perfect example. They have one in-house. They used a 2nd-round pick on a dude who's a stud, and for the first 2 years of his career, they've had to stick him at nose tackle, where he gets the least amount of playing time on the defense. Go get a nose. Like if you get Javon Hargrave, you have Montravius Adams. You don't need another nose tackle. Now you focus on the important defensive tackles, which is who's playing behind Keanu Benton and who's playing behind Cam Hayward. Who are those guys? Is DeMarvin Leal good enough, or can you use him as your 4th outside linebacker, which is another option? It just makes things so much easier. And then go find, just like the 700-pound dude we looked at yesterday.
Yeah.
Like that's who you find eventually to just be like, well, there he is. That's the nose tackle. You know, unless an Ndamukong Suh comes out of nowhere, there's just, in the Steelers defense, they run too many sub packages to sit here and justify utilizing a big name at that position. You just, it doesn't make any sense. It really does. That's why Tyson Alualu turned out to be perfect there, because on running downs, it worked really well. But besides that, you didn't have to waste a bunch of capital on that position. Now they have to be good, because when they're not good, you have issues. But Javon Hargraves is cheap, most likely, and good. I mean, he was guaranteed $40 million in his last contract. I feel like he's going to be okay with a cheap $6 million, $5 million deal.
Especially coming off of an injury.
Yeah. At 31 years old. I think he'll be very much so okay in the NFL.